Well, it is 4 o'clock.
Let's go to Arizona. Right around 1998, a whole lot was happening in Goshen, Indiana. I was teaching at the middle school. One of my good teacher friends was murdered that year. She was stabbed to death in her home. It was horrific. We had gangs in Goshen forming. We had Caucasian gangs and Mexican gangs. And one weekend we'd have a Mexican killed, and one weekend we'd have a Caucasian killed. And it just went back and forth and back and forth. 1998, a student that I taught 2 years in a row came to my English class. He just never got promoted to high school. And his little sister was a 6th grader in the same building. We were grades 6, 7, and 8 at Goshen Middle School. And he came to my English class and said, "I need you now." And I said, "Dude, I'm teaching." And he said, "I need you now." And I said, "Okay, I trust you. What do you need?" And he said, "I need you to come to my locker with me." I said, "Okay." So I followed him to his locker, and he opened it up, and out of his coat, he pulled a very long knife. And he said, "If you don't take this knife from me, I'm going to murder the kid that hurt my sister." And there was a red-headed boy who had taken his sister by the hair and shoved her into the combination lock and broken her nose. And this boy was beside himself. So how do you hide this knife? So I took it back to my room and put it in my desk drawer and continued teaching, went to the principal in between classes and said, "We need to talk about promoting this child and getting this family safe." So that was 1998. 1999, I decided to go and get a Master's of Fine Arts in Children's Theater. I just needed out. I needed out of Goshen. I needed out of teaching for a little while. It was just, there was a whole lot of heaviness. And I went to Arizona State University to get an MFA because at Arizona, I could get a degree and a tan, and that was a pretty good deal. Hawaii was too expensive. Minnesota, why would I want to go there? And Texas, same reason. Ugh. So I went to Arizona, and that's where I got my MFA. While and by the way, I wasn't accepted into the program. Their program was full. And I went out anyway, and I told the lady in charge, "I'm out of state tuition. You gotta be kidding me that there's no room for out-of-state tuition in this program." So they opened up one more position. It was a 2-year program, a 4-semester program. I finished in 3. I was hired by Mesa Schools before I even graduated, bought my house in 2000, got 2 dogs, and voted Libertarian. It was a really bad year for my dad because my dad is a staunch Democrat, and he said to me, "Carol Jean, I raised you better than that, and Al Gore would have been president if you had voted for him." And I said, "I do not live in Florida. I am not in charge of the hanging chads. That is not my fault." But all of that happened in the year 2000, and thus began just a whole life, it seemed, a whole chapter of life in Arizona for me. My very first year, my convertible was stolen, called the police, and I said, "Hey, my car is stolen." And they said, "Yeah, we know where it is." And I said, "Well, are you gonna go get it?" They said, "No, it's in Mexico. It'll have a very nice time and eventually it will come back." And by the time it did come back, it belonged to the insurance company and I had a different car. So the first year was just crazy, just getting used to new temperature. The desert looked only like dirt to me. And I was 30, early 30s, in a program with a lot of young people in their 20s, and some of them shouldn't have been with children, and some of them were getting doctorates, and I was just beyond myself. So the first couple of years, I'm sure you felt this too, every time you moved and changed. There's just so much to get used to. In 25 minutes now that I have left, I cannot take you to every place I visited in Arizona. I cannot tell you about everything that I learned or all the incredible people I met or about the passion that I had for the beautiful desert, especially in the winter, if we had really good monsoon rains in August. I can't tell you about the year that we had tornadoes and hailstorms and it snowed in Phoenix. I don't even have time to tell you about any of that. Instead, I'm going to take you on a field trip to my happy places, and we're going to limit that to about 5 of them. Well, you can see the flag, Arizona Wren, and we have the prickly pear pie. If you get prickly pear ice cream, it's one of the best things on earth. The state flower is the saguaro cactus blossom, cactus wren. Palo Verde are not very pretty trees. I'm not quite sure why they chose that one as their state tree, and of course, every state has a quarter. There we go. This is not my daughter. My stepdaughter, Aubrey, lives in Detroit. This is not even my exchange student. I borrowed this exchange student, and I took her to Arizona. My very first year that I lived in North Manchester, almost 6 years ago now, we had 2 boys as exchange students, and that went pretty well. The next year we got 2 girls, and it was a disaster. And they staged a coup, got new host parents, thought we were horrible, terrible people, and I cannot tell you the relief I felt when they walked out the door, because I would have done anything to please them and to make them happy. That's what host parents do. And I realized that day there was nothing I could do to make them happy. But I had planned a trip to Arizona for spring break. So I called my friend Jan, who was in Jay County, and she had Stacy living in her home. Stacy is from Ukraine, and she couldn't go back home because of the war. And she still has not been home since the war began. Stacy is now married because she is seeking citizenship here in the United States. But Stacy was available for me to steal, so a number of the pictures that you will see have Stacy in them because, well, gosh darn it, she's just so cute and adorable. How many of you have been to the Grand Canyon? How many of you have been there more than once? Yes. Yes, don't you wish you could go again and again and again? I've been to all sides of the Grand Canyon because many people want to visit you when you live in Arizona. By the way, I have had 2 of my Arizona friends visit me in Indiana, and I've been back since 2008. So more people want to go there to vacation. So the Grand Canyon is incredible. Have any of you done the walk that you do out over the canyon, the clear walk? It's expensive. Yeah, the clear walkway. Yeah, what did you think of it?
It was amazing.
Amazing.
To look down and see.
I had the opposite opinion. I felt that it wasn't the prettiest part of the canyon, but I had been to the canyon a ridiculous amount of times. And my car had gone more often than I, because so many of my friends would come out or relatives would come out. I believe B, your daughter Kim, and Brian came out. They borrowed my car and went up to the canyon and came back. So my sister was so scared of that walkway, she just crawled. She just crawled on her hands and knees. And I'm like, oh, this isn't what I expected. Yeah, I'm going to show you some pictures of the canyon. And cute little Stacy. It's just vast. And the pictures don't do it any justice. And you can see the snow in the front. My sister Eva came out to visit the first year that I lived out there, and she came in March, and we barely got to the canyon because the roads were still closed. So we had a hard time getting there. We had to find new and inventive ways to get into the canyon itself, to be able to look out. It's just so beautiful, and it's so fun that I took the pictures. I took Stacy in late March, early April. It was so cold, so foggy, so snowy, you would not be able to tell that there was even a canyon there. We couldn't see it. So I had her take her Ukrainian flag so we could get some good pictures of her at the canyon. And she's saying, I can't even see it. And we were just so cold and so wet. Stacy was so cute. She had an outfit for every place we went. And she had to revisit the canyon. We did something else and then we came back when it was less cold so she could really see it. Sedona is one of my favorite places on earth. Switzerland tops it, in my opinion, but Sedona is incredible. How many of you have been to Sedona? Isn't it breathtaking? This will look very familiar to you. Chapel of the Holy Cross. How many of you walked up that long, curvy road? Yes. And you walk up and then you can participate in a mass if you choose, or you can just look out at just the beautiful view. Of course, there is a gift shop. It's so beautiful. And I won't spend a lot of time about vortices and the vortex, but this chapel is on a vortex. And the energy that I feel is very spiritual and very holy and just very peaceful and calming. It's just beautiful. I'm asked by Shirley Mishler so many times, have you ever slid down the rock? And I have never slid down the rock at Slide Rock, but I've been to many of the canyons in the area. I've been to the rock. I've watched other people slide down it. This picture to the right, my friend Dawn and I, the last time I was out there just last year, we did an audio tour of Sedona and Oak Creek Canyon. So it's kind of like listening to an audiobook where they tell you the history, they tell you where to turn and how to get to all these places, and they give you a lot of story and background information. So it was a really lovely way to see something that we had seen many times before. And we could not find this area to the right. We walked and walked and walked and couldn't find it. And finally, Dawn said, it's gotta be down here. And she went down this little trail and she got super quiet. And I said, oh my gosh, what's wrong? She said, it's beautiful. And we drove all day just to get that picture. When you're in Sedona, you have to do a Jeep tour. Doesn't matter which one you take, which company you go with, but whenever I had someone for the first time in the Sedona area, we typically went with pink Jeep tours just because it makes an adorable picture. And she had so much fun. Stacy wasn't allowed, of course, to drive the Jeep, but the driver allowed her to sit in it and to pretend she was driving. She was an exchange student, so she wasn't allowed to drive anyway. I always had prickly pear ice cream when I was up in Sedona. It was just fun to do. I have eaten cooked saguaro cactus. I believe Kim and Kelly were out with me one time, and Kim and Kelly Nar had cactus with me too. When Stacy and I were out there, I saw something in Sedona I hadn't seen before. For all the dozens of times I had been up there, I had never seen Sedona flooded. And the Jeep couldn't even go where we normally went. Schnebly Hill road was closed. We could only go so far. And so I took a lot of muddy pictures. It doesn't make a lot of sense to you, but the bottom left picture, there should not be a waterfall there. There are no waterfalls in Sedona. So to see something like that was completely different and new for someone who'd been there so many times. Antelope Canyon. When I took Stacy out, I said, I'm going to show you all of my favorite places of Arizona that we can get to in a couple of days, but I want to go to one place I've never been to before, and that's Antelope Canyon. So you start on the left side, and that's what you see. Then you go down, it looks like a fissure. You just go down into this crack, and there's a spiral staircase. You go down the spiral staircase, and there are two areas, a north end and a south end. And we were in the southern end of the two, and you go down, and then you begin to look up and see this incredible view. How many of you have been to Antelope Canyon? Oh, it blew my mind. And it just, everything looked like that. And it's all underground. There were no stalagmites or stalactites. It isn't a cavern. It's a canyon. But the canyon is underground. And it was just spectacular. You have to change your camera to a different number, a different filter, and then you get that gorgeous red look. So once in a while, you'll see a picture next to another one, and one is redder, and that's because I changed the filter. It was mesmerizing. I bet I took thousands of pictures. Lots of cacti. Saguaro amazed me. I started collecting cacti and planting them in an area outside my kitchen window, thinking it'd be so fun to collect all the different kinds of cacti and just have them right outside my kitchen window. I didn't get very far before I sold my home. Now, the tree to the right is not a cactus. The tree to the right is actually in Sedona, and it's called the most photographed tree in Sedona. You have to know where it is, because if you ask somebody for directions, they just say, oh, you just go down this road and then you turn left. That is all true, but you have to know where to turn left. And I found it one time when Ed and I were out in Arizona, and we found it and we watched the sunset then, and now I've been able to go back time and time again. And it's just beautiful that you can see the red rocks of Sedona through the tree, just beyond the tree. I have never found the cactus, the saguaro cactus, with the most arms. You pass it leaving Phoenix and going up to Sedona, but I've never found it. Okay. If you're on a field trip with me, you have to go to the Mystery Castle in Phoenix. It is the craziest, strangest place I've ever been. This man, Boyce Luther Gully, he was dying. He left his family, and he said, I'm going to die in the West. And he went out to Arizona and built a one-room house, shack really, and lived. So he built another room. And then he built another room, and he built another room, and another room, and another room, and another room, and finally he brought his family out to live with him. And they call it a mystery castle. It has 18 rooms, 13 fireplaces, built in the 1930s. And that aerial picture just gives you the breadth of it. It was the craziest, wildest place I'd ever seen. And for any of you who ever had the coupon book, lots of schools use them for fundraisers, and in the coupon book you could oftentimes get 2 for 1, and every year I would wait for the new coupon book to come out so I would have a 2 for 1 for the Mystery Castle, and I'd grab a new friend and take them there with me. And I know that I have dragged Jane there, and she has been through the Mystery Castle. The daughter lives there now, but she's getting up in years, and she is limited how many tours she takes now through the Mystery Castle. John Wayne has been there. Lots of other people have been there and then donated something to the castle. I would also take you to Giant Hamburgers in Mesa. When I bought my house in 2000, everything was a little overwhelming. I'd never owned a home before. I'd always rented before that, and I'd never had dogs, and Fraulein one day got mad at me because I locked the dog door, so she chewed a hole through my house so she could go outside. and I came home to a hole in my house. It was like, I don't know how to fix these things. And so I was just so overwhelmed, and I needed to find a place that was comforting to me, really close to my home, on Lindsay, and, well, it's Lindsay and Baseline, between Baseline and Gebert, Baseline and Southern. No, that's the other end. Never mind. It's really close to Southern and Lindsay. There is Giant Hamburgers, and this is Oscar. And he would listen to me. This wonderful Mexican man would just listen to me. And if he wasn't busy, he would just sit down and make himself a hamburger, or we'd split a piece of pie, and he would just listen. And he had recently come, this would have been right around 2000, 2001, and he had recently come from Mexico, was raising money and sending it back home and trying to get the rest of his family up to the Phoenix area. He is still there, he is still working there, so every time I go back, I go to Mesa and I get a giant burger and a piece of giant pie, and I sit down with Oscar and we talk for a while. I worked at the Hyatt Regency Scottsdale for a while with the gondola program, and this was before the Paris Hotel was set up in Vegas. I say that because one of our gondoliers was poached from the Hyatt Regency, taken to Las Vegas, transferred there, and he began the gondola program and trained everybody for the gondola program at Las Vegas. And that was my friend Tony. So when my friend Tony went to Vegas to work, he said, hey, the boats are about to open. Why don't you come out and take a ride? You'll be the first civilian on a gondola. So I was the first civilian on the gondolas at Paris, Las Vegas. And that was just a ton of fun because you got to go, I just got to do all the behind the scenes stuff, and that was just so much fun. And when I worked at the gondolas, I wasn't a singer on the boat. I was a hostess with the mostest right outside of the gondolas and would time the boats and get everybody out on the boats on time. Lots of famous people came down to the boats. Lots of men came down with a different woman every weekend. And lots of really tall basketball players and all the baseball players, the Cubs trained out there. Just so many people were out there. I didn't know any of the athletes by name, so I just treated them like, you know, any common person, and they really appreciated that. And then the gondolier would say, do you know who just gave you that $10 bill? That was Scottie Pippen, or that was, I don't know, somebody else. I never knew who it was. And you'll see in the picture to the right, a little lady there. That's my mother-in-law, Jane. I dragged her around with me quite a bit. Well, I know that Vegas is not in Arizona, but it might as well be. Vegas, for many people, is kind of a dark city, lots of dark spiritual energy. For me, it's just a ton of fun. I know where to go and what to do, and I don't gamble, and I don't drink, and so I just have a lot of fun. And when Stacy had to go, so she had to go, she had to have that picture, she wanted to meet Elvis. I kept explaining he's dead, but we did the next best thing. And we saw an Elvis impersonator, and this will be a little too personal, but he wore the white jumpsuit, and it was very thin and didn't wear a lot under it. And Stacy kept saying, I am seeing a lot of Elvis. I should not be seeing so much of Elvis right now. And we took that big Ferris wheel, and we went up, and so we could take our aerial shots. That was a lot of fun. Well, there were camels in Arizona. Did you know about this? You can't see them anymore, but in 1855, the U.S. Army imported or brought in camels from Egypt and from Turkey. They used them as pack animals, and when they no longer needed the camels, they didn't know what to do with them, and they just set them free. So people still talk about their grandparents or their great-grandparents' stories of these random, wandering, nomadic camels in Arizona just walking around and just having a good time. And a lot of them were taken into farms or put into zoos, and they were taken care of. Then there is this legend of the red ghost, that the red ghost is a camel with a dead man strapped to his back. It was reported in 1893, and some people believe that a gentleman even killed the red ghost, and some people say the red ghost is still walking around Arizona today. Well, people like to talk about the Civil War and how it entered Arizona. If you've been to Picacho Peak, there's a pass there, Picacho Pass, and a Californian Union troop met up with a Confederate troop, and they did have a bit of a skirmish, and a gentleman was killed there. And there is a huge story about it that's pretty interesting, but I'm running out of time, and you can find it, I'm sure, on Wikipedia. But the outcome, well, they were battling over Tucson, and Tucson is just south of Picacho Peak. And they were battling over Tucson. Both groups, the North and the South, both wanted Tucson. And eventually the Union received Tucson, but the South held out for a long time. And people, well, I'll go to this perspective. I was teaching 6th grade American history, and I was shocked at what a strong northern perspective I had, because I grew up in Indiana, and how stilted my education was, how strongly, what a strong Union sympathizer I was, because so many of my students' families were Confederates. And I kept saying, but it's Arizona. And they kept saying, we're the South. Well, you're kind of the West. Like, I really had a hard time wrapping my mind around this idea that their families would still be staunch Confederates. So to bless that idea, I brought in my friend Stretch, who as a reenactor was a Confederate soldier, and he came in with his uniform and his stories and his gun, and he talked about how the Confederacy won, and he talked about Picacho Pass, and that was really interesting. I really had to open my mind to being more neutral about the Civil War. I didn't even think about how prejudiced I was toward one side or the other. Well, of course, these are the people I go to visit for real, for real, for real. My cousins, they are they're south of Tucson in Green Valley. And my friend Nadine up above and to the right, she's the one who gave me my first dogs, Nikki and Fraulein, and then their mama dog, Dino. She has so many dogs. So when I go out there, I get all the dog love, and Nadine cooks and cooks and cooks. Now this picture down in the middle, bottom middle, Dawn Lifgren is to the left and Belinda Balo is in the middle, and I'm to the right. Belinda is my friend who's been battling cancer for more than 10 years. And some of you have met her because she went on a trip with us to Indiana, Purdue University in Fort Wayne, Purdue Fort Wayne, to see a play. And some of you were on the bus with Belinda. And her cancer numbers are up, so that's why I'm going back to Arizona next week. We just have to spend time together. A little side note, my friends, Dawn, Belinda, and Nadine, do not like each other at all. So my 3 best friends, I can never have them, or rarely have them, in the same room at the same time. So I can't just go out to dinner and see my girlfriends, because it's just not going to happen. So to have Dawn and Belinda in the same picture at the same time, that was a rare, rare moment. Notice Nadine is not there. And that is Arizona from my perspective. Oh, there's so much that I learned from being in Arizona. I grew up, I became independent, I became a homeowner, and then I decided to come home when Mom and Dad entered Peabody and wanted to be closer to them. Put my house on the market 2007. I think you remember how the market took a nosedive. The moment I put my house on the market crashed. and it took a year for it to sell. So I owned a home a year longer than I actually lived there. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.